June 8, 1951. The Tom Thumb Wedding in Vermilion, Ohio. Introduction to the Emprise. A Tom Thumb wedding is a pageant where children act out a marriage ceremony. They became popular in the late 19th century, inspired by the 1863 wedding of General Tom Thumb, a dwarf who was born Charles Sherwood Stratton in Connecticut in 1838, and another little person some called the Little Queen of Beauty, Lavinia Warren, who was born in Massachusetts in 1842. These plays have been put on for community crowds in America for over a century, and believe it or not, continue to be performed today in various places. The pageant takes its name and inspiration from the real wedding of Sherwood and Lavinia. It took place in a posh New York ceremony in 1863. It was nicknamed the Fairy Wedding. The wedding was such a sensation it knocked Civil War news off the New York Times front page for 3 days straight. Mr. Stratton was a gifted performer who became the major attraction for circus impresario P.T. Barnum during the 19th century. He would sing, dance, perform a riotous pantless routine where he impersonated Grecian statues, and commanded the fancy of women the world over, to whom he swore he was a general in Cupid's artillery. It is estimated that over 4 decades, he performed for more than 50 million people in 24 countries, including a performance for British Queen Victoria. Tom Thumb's extraordinary wedding would ironically prove to be his legacy, though certainly not in the way he or anyone else would have expected. He died in 1883, and the idea of a theatrical child wedding be performed as his memorial began not long after.
I know not who or why it was decided to hold such a pageant in the little village of Vermilion, Ohio back in 1951. But, as one may surmise by the accompanying photograph taken at Vermilion's South Street School, it certainly did take place. What I also know is that at least 80 Vermilion children were in attendance. Tommy Roberts was the groom and Nancy Ludlow was the bride. The maid of honor was Elsie Gould. Best man was Stuart Warner. Bridesmaids were Jackie Jeffrey, Ellen Barth and Dana Buell. Ushers were Jim Green, Russ Mose and Joe King. The ring bearer was David Fisher, who was only 4 years and 7 months old at the time. The bride's parents were Kathy Dickinson and Billy Ream, and the groom's parents were Susie Rathbun and Russ Cool. I also know that out of a list of the 80 wedding participants there are only 6 names that I don't recognize. I have 2 cousins, Noreen Welch and Janet Lindsay, and a sister, Zella Butchie, in the entourage. And there are many others whose names many persons will easily recognize. Dave Buell, Ken McDaniel, Bobby Neller, Howard Bogart, Eric Amon, Kathleen Grant, Sandy Derby, Judy Shaw, Noreen Peterka, Judy Creel, Linda Russell, Barb Hayes, Joan Wolodarski, Jackie Vassbinder, Lance Warner, Russ Fisher, Barb Wiseman, Frankie Zeckley, Alan, Pete, Needing, Bobby Green, Larry Niddle, Bob Noltner, Jimmy Fisher, Dave Birch, Don Kress, Mike Havrilla, Ron Lashinsky, Shirley Malone, Susan Height, Tommy Boone, Janet Watson, Meredith Raprick, Mary Lee Russell, Carol Locks, Sandy Yeamans, Linda Peck, Paul Wood, Suzanne Burge, Ada Greenhoe, Bev Heyman, Bob Fackler, Steve Mayer, Eldon Peck, Karen Hollowsey and Dave Haley. Although many of these children were my contemporaries, I was obviously excluded from the affair. Looking back, I don't feel slighted in the least by not being included in the pageant. I'm actually relieved some, even as I look at this photograph. For it was not my proverbial coupote, then, or now. However, I do vividly recall that during that period of my life I had the propensity to contract every childhood illness that existed, and late May and early June being the worst times to be suffering with mumps or measles seemed to be precisely when I had them. I can remember lying morose in bed and listening to the neighbor kids just outside my window, having all kinds of fun because summer vacation had finally arrived. Well, a good deal of water has passed under the bridge since Tom Thumb's wedding in Vermilion. And though I was not in attendance, I look over the faces in the photo with a smile on my face. Gosh, how I loved those kids in those days, and how lucky I am to have known them, not only as they were then, but also as the persons they became. I guess that's one of the benefits of being born and growing old in a small town. December 25, 2019.